On April 11th, 1986, Alicia Blake woke up at 5 a.m. to the sounds of a flickering television and her front door wide open and the lights still on. Confused, she began to frantically check her children's bedrooms. When she reached her 14-year-old daughter's Rickie's room, she realized that Rickie was missing and her bed had not been slept in. Alicia started searching the house and woke up her husband while continuing looking for Rickie, only to discover that Rickie was not in the home. She quickly noticed her shoes still by the door. Alicia began calling neighbors and friends in search of Rickie, but unfortunately, no one had any information about her whereabouts, and it seems as though she completely simply vanished. Before we delve deeper into this story, I need you to like, subscribe, and to share this channel. And don't forget to turn on your post notification bell so you don't miss any cases. Now back to this tragic story. But to fully understand this case, I need you to travel back with me to April 11th, 1986, to Chula Vista, California. Rickie Ann Blake was born on March 14th, 1972 in San Diego, California, to William Blake and Alicia Blake. As a child, Rickie was a shy and sweet girl who enjoyed playing soccer and singing in a choir. She was generally a very happy girl who stayed out of trouble. Rickie loved playing with her Cabbage Patch dolls, often changing their outfits and dressing them up in their little pajamas every night before bed. She had two siblings, including a sister named Bootsy and a brother named Bobby. Often referred to as Banana, Rickie blossomed into a beautiful and outgoing girl by the age of 14. She lived with her parents and her two siblings on Oleander Avenue in Chula Vista, California, while her brother Bobby was stationed overseas in the armed forces. On April 10th of 1986, Rickie's dad picked her up from school to take her to the dentist. After returning home, Rickie had complained of tooth pain from the procedure, so she had a bowl of soup and ice cream for dinner. To ease her discomfort, she took an aspirin. A little after 9 o'clock, Rickie's parents decided to go to bed. And while they went to bed, Rickie chose to stay up to watch a Padres game that was on TV that night. Shortly after 10 p.m. that evening, Rickie's sister Bootsy returned home with two of her friends. The phone decided to ring, and one of Bootsy's friends answered it. An adult male voice asked for 14-year-old Rickie, but the friend felt that he sounded too old to be calling someone Rickie's age and hung up. The trio then decided to sit outside on the porch to chat, while Rickie decided to join them. As they began to talk, they realized it was getting late, and Bootsy's two friends decided to head home. Bootsy and Rickie went inside the door and locked it behind them. Rickie quickly got on the phone for a three-way call with her friend Kristen and a boy she liked named Henry. After chatting for a while, Rickie's older sister Bootsy told her to hang up the phone because she needed to use it. Rickie finally ended her phone call and took the phone to her sister Bootsy's room shortly around 11 p.m. that night. The phone would ring again. Bootsy picked it up, and a man named George asked for Rickie. Rickie took the call and went back to her room while Bootsy fell asleep. The next morning, Rickie's mother Alicia will wake up at 5 a.m. to the loud sound of a living room television and notice the lights were on and the front door was wide open. Confused, she hurried up to check on her children in their bedroom. When she reached Rickie's room, she realized that Rickie had not slept in her bed, and her Cabbage Patch dolls were not dressed in their pajamas, which Rickie will always ensure they were before she went to bed. Looking at the front door, she also noticed that Rickie's shoes were still in its place. In a panic, Alicia will wake up her husband William, and they begin to start searching the house looking for Rickie. Alicia began calling neighbors and friends to see if anyone have heard or seen Rickie. But unfortunately, none of the neighbors or friends knew where she was, prompting Rickie's dad William to get in his car and search the neighborhood for her. Meanwhile, Alicia will call 911 to report Rickie missing. A neighbor named George Bell quickly arrived at the Blakes' residence after hearing that Rickie was missing. The Chula Vista police arrived and filed a missing persons report for Rickie. Later that evening, around 10 p.m., a motorist on the I-15 discovered a young girl's body on Main Street off the ramp of the Interstate 15. She was lying on her back with her face beaten, bruises on her left eye and cheek, and slight bruising on her chin and lip. The motorist promptly called 911, and the San Diego police arrived at the scene. They quickly realized the young girl was deceased. The San Diego Homicide Detective Unit was dispatched to the scene to preserve it, collect evidence, and canvass the area for witnesses. The San Diego homicide investigators would observe that the young girl was dressed in a pink sweatshirt, black pants, and dirty socks. She had no shoes, and bloodstains were visible on her collar of her sweatshirt, on her white tank top beneath it, and also on her bra straps. Her black pants and underwear had a strong odor of urine. They quickly indicated that the young girl had not been killed at that location where her body was discovered. Near her body, police found 2 footprints and 2 beer cans. Unfortunately, no fingerprints could be retrieved from the scene or the 2 beer cans. Additionally, police uncovered tracks from the rear wheels of a truck and a series of droplets that seemed to be fluid from a vehicle. The body was taken to the San Diego Medical Examiner's office, where an autopsy was performed on April 12, 1986. During the autopsy, the medical examiner had noted that there were some light marks above the victim's breast, suggesting that something had been pressed against her upper chest. Both her tank top and bra were pulled above her breast. Her left eye was swollen and bruised, indicative of a blunt force trauma similar to a punch. There was bruising inside the lining of both eyelids and on the right eye, consistent with neck compressions that could have collapsed the jugular vein. She also had injuries to her mouth that was consistent with a beverage bottle being forced inside. On the left side of her neck, there were injuries beneath the chin, along with bruising and a small scrape on her left side of her face. Soft tissue showed multiple areas of hemorrhage, which was consistent with neck compression. No injuries or abnormalities were found near her private area. It is believed that the victim may have been slammed against a hard surface, leading to hemorrhaging and loss of consciousness. Fluid was discovered in her lungs, consistent with someone force-feeding her alcohol, resulting in aspiration into her lungs. Swabs indicated that the victim had been sexually assaulted, and DNA was found on her underwear and pants. The DNA was linked to one single donor. The medical examiner had estimated that her death occurred between 1 a.m. on April 11th and April 12th. He also estimated that the DNA found was deposited about 48 to 72 hours before her death. He also noted that the victim's blood alcohol level was 0.4, which could have been influenced by alcohol consumption, ingestion, or decomposition. He would officially determine that the cause of death was strangulation, although suffocation could also be a possibility. The victim was identified as 14-year-old Rickie Ann Blake. Rickie's parents, William and Alicia, were very heartbroken by the news of their daughter's tragic passing. They began to mobilize the community in search of the individual responsible for Rickie's death. Homicide investigators had no leads, and the only tip received was about a man named George, who called the Blake's residence shortly before Rickie's death. Many students and friends from Rickie's school were shocked and deeply saddened about her tragic passing, with many of them needing comfort from teachers and staff. Rickie's rosary was held at the Glen Abbey Memorial Chapel on Tuesday, April 15th, 1986. A total of 102 students would submit permission slips from home requesting to be excused to attend her 2 p.m. funeral services. Homicide detectives would receive tips from other students indicating that Rickie had expressed concern about this man named George, who would call her house occasionally, and he seemed to know a lot about her. They reported that Rickie did not know who he was, but she became quite frightened. They also mentioned that she had spoken to him several times on the phone, including the night she disappeared. Following Rickie's funeral, her parents began receiving disturbing phone calls inquiring if Rickie had returned home yet, occupied by a laugh before the caller would hang up. One caller even played Rickie's favorite song before the call ended. The harassment continued, leading Rickie's mother, Alicia, to eventually stop answering the phone. Concerned for her safety, she decided to send her only surviving daughter, Bootsy, to live with relatives outside of California. Alicia grew desperate in her quest to find the individual who was responsible for taking Rickie's life, reaching out to psychics and contacting the homicide detective for updates on her daughter's unsolved case. Rickie's case would remain cold and unsolved for years until a DNA match hit in 2003 linked the suspect to the swabs taken during Rickie's autopsy. The suspect was identified as George Williams Jr. He had a history of violent offenses, including a sexual assault on his own 6-year-old daughter in 1984. This incident involved him giving her an alcoholic beverage while her mother was away. Once his wife discovered the abuse, she ended up relocating with her children to San Diego, leaving George behind. He would later plead guilty to molestation on April 18, 1986. In April of 1986, a woman named Velma lived in the same apartment complex as George's ex-wife. George would visit his ex-wife 2 to 3 times a week. Although Velma recognized him, they had no direct interaction. On the evening hours of April in 1986, George followed Velma into her apartment and threatened her with a knife. He then restrained her wrists with a curling iron and her ankles with a phone cord. He then poured baby oil on her intimate areas and sexually abused her. After the assault, George inquired about anyone else in the apartment. Velma had told George that her daughters were asleep in the other room, and she pleaded and begged him not to harm them. But George left the room where Velma was and entered the bedroom where her 2 daughters were. As Velma found herself bound in the bedroom, she can hear the screams of her daughters in another room. Shortly after, George will return to Velma, where he began to assault her again. Eventually, George fell asleep, providing Velma the opportunity to free her wrists and her legs. She grabbed George's knife and some clothes before entering her girl's bedroom. This is where she discovered a pool of blood near her 6-year-old daughter's bed. Velma quickly left with her daughters and called the police. She had taken her keys, allowing her to lock the door from the inside, preventing George from escaping without a key. The police arrived at her home and arrested George, while the girls were taken to the nearby hospital. Her 6-year-old daughter, who had also been assaulted by George, had to remain in the hospital for 3 days. On November 13th of 1981, George Williams Jr. sexually assaulted a 15-year-old girl named Sandra in Compton. Sandra was acquainted with George through her brother, who worked at the same naval shipyard. During a store run, George drove Sandra to a secluded dark area and forced her into the back of his van, where he tore off her clothes and assaulted her. Sandra managed to escape from the van and flagged down a nearby police officer. Although the officer arrested George Williams Jr., the case did not proceed because the 15-year-old girl chose not to attend the trial, wanting to move on with her life, which allowed George Williams to walk free. A few years later, on June 13th of 1985, George Williams went out for drinks with a woman in the military. After making sexual advances that she rejected, he then bound her with a belt and shoelaces and sexually assaulted her. He drove her back to the base, where the woman reported the assault to her commanding officer. In February of 1998, George Williams also sexually assaulted his 14-year-old relative named Leon in Indiana. When homicide detectives apprehended George Williams Jr., he claimed that he never met Rickie. He also denied any sexual interactions with her. Rickie's friend Rami had informed detectives that she had recognized George Williams Jr. as the individual that Rickie had introduced her to at the skating rink in Chula Vista. She mentioned that Rickie also said she was in a relationship with George, despite not being able to date. Rickie's sister Bootsy had also remarked that George seemed familiar. She said that he had resembled someone she had seen at the Chula Vista skating rink in which she often visited. A security guard from the Chula Vista skating rink also identified George Williams Jr. as a person who always frequently skated there. He was also known for his impressive skating skills. Rickie had a neighbor also named George Bell, who was like an older brother to her. According to George Bell's ex-wife Gloria, she said that he had made some vague remarks about Rickie's death. She stated that he mentioned Rickie's murder 50 times after her passing, expressing sorrow and insisting it was an accident. Gloria also recounted that George Bell had warned her that if she ever spoke out, he would bury her 6 feet underground. George Bell denied these allegations, yet continued to make cryptic statements regarding Rickie's death. He claimed that she had a tire mark on her face and that her body was discarded on Main Street. He also mentioned that Rickie's glasses could be found in the trunk of a crushed car at a junkyard, which he said that belonged to his mechanic, Greg Richardson. Greg Richardson also lived just a block away from Rickie's home. Gloria had confronted George, asking him if he had killed Rickie, to which she said he fell silent. She alleged that George had been abusive towards her and had been sexually assaulting her during their marriage, and he also refused to visit his stepfather's grave, where Rickie is interred. She claimed that George blamed Rickie's death on Greg Richardson. George had asserted that Greg had worked on his car because it was leaking pink transmission fluid. Gloria directly questioned George about his involvement in Rickie's death, to which George remained silent. She mentioned that George claimed that Rickie's death was likely an accident that happened when someone attempted to sexually assault her by covering her mouth and unintentionally causing her to suffocate. When homicide detectives inquired about his location during Rickie's disappearance, he stated that he was with his ex-girlfriend Angela, dropping her off at 9 p.m. on the night that Rickie went missing. He claimed that he had returned home around 10:30 or 11 p.m., but Angela had contradicted that story, asserting that George was never with her, as she was attending a funeral in Los Angeles. Rickie's mother, Alicia, mentioned that on the morning that Rickie went missing, she had called their neighbor George Bell. George promptly passed the phone to his mother and rushed completely to their home, visibly upset. Although George was questioned briefly, he was cleared as a suspect due to the DNA of George Williams Jr. being found on Rickie. The defense team for George Williams Jr. had argued that they believed George Bell was actually responsible for Rickie's death, as the DNA evidence indicated that it was deposited 2 to 3 days prior to her murder, implying a consensual interaction between George Williams and Rickie. George Bell rejected all allegations related to Rickie's death. On September 28, 2004, George Williams was convicted and found guilty of all charges for the 1986 kidnapping, sexual assault, and first-degree murder of 14-year-old Rickie Ann Blake, aka Banana. He received a death sentence. The California Supreme Court officially upheld his conviction and death sentence in December of 2016. Currently, George Williams is incarcerated at the California Institution for Men in Chino, California, where he will spend the remainder of his life behind bars. After her death, Rickie's parents could not bear to clear out her room, as it served a painful reminder of the precious life that was tragically taken from them. Rickie's mother, Alicia, passed away in August of 2003. Her sister, Bootsy, included one of Rickie's Cabbage Patch dolls at her wedding so she can honor her beautiful sister that she mourned. Rickie, also known as Banana, was only 14 years old when her life was cut short, and she was a student at Bonita Junior High School. The life of Rickie was taken by a heartless monster. She deserved to be alive today. She missed so many opportunities and milestones, including graduating from high school and getting married, experiences that she will never have. Her memories were stolen from her family. You have to ask yourself, how could someone take the life of such a beautiful girl and have no emotion or empathy towards her family or friends? Only a monster can live with the knowledge that they had took an innocent light from this world for their own sick and twisted pleasure. We are currently here at the Glen Abbey Memorial Park in Bonita, California, visiting the final resting place of 14-year-old Rickie Ann Blake, also known as Banana. Please continue to pray for the family of Rickie Ann Blake, and I am grateful that they received the justice that they truly deserved. And rest in peace, Banana. May we advocate for you, through you, and about you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share for more of these cases and great content. Until next time, don't forget to love each other, pray for one another, and spread kindness to each other. Thanks for watching.